So here's the jig that I've come up with to try and glue this damaged glass tile back together. So it's just a couple of straight edges to give registration points. And since there is one surface of the glass is straight, I'll use that to help me guide all the pieces together, and then I'll glue them one at a time against this edge with some very, very thin super glue. And then if that holds, we'll see about reinforcing it from the back. So that's the plan. We'll see how that goes. Okay, there's first pass, initial tacked together. Let that set up for a while, and then see if it holds its strength. Okay, that process for gluing up the glass, I would give it no more than 2 out of 10 in terms of effectiveness. I guess my mistake was in putting just a regular piece of paper underneath. I need to put something ideally that's non-stick to super glue, so some sort of Teflon or something underneath. Because what happens is the paper sticks to the glass with the super glue, and any attempt to get it off just actually takes the paint off the glass. So I think structurally it's okay, but it looks a mess. But since I'm in a nothing to lose type of situation here, I thought at least I'll give it a go. So I'll see if I can come up with something a little better for gluing the other side. And then of course before we glue the two end pieces onto the main part. Okay, here's version 2. So this time instead of paper underneath the glass, I have a piece of plastic. And I've also put some oil on the wood underneath, just in case there's any holes in the plastic and that would cause the whole thing to stick to the wood. So let's see what happens this time. Well, technique number 2 is definitely the way to go. No sticking on the back. The plastic peeled off nicely. Unfortunately, because the glass was kind of shattered rather than just simply broken, it doesn't fit back together that brilliantly. But hey, okay, so now I can glue these two end pieces onto the main part, and using this oil and plastic process, and at least I'll have the dial put back together, and it'll do until I can find something better. Right, I've given the chassis a bit of a dust off and started to clean it up a little bit and see what's what. The first immediate challenge is that it looks like the FM tuning condenser and all the associated cord works fine, but the AM one is totally seized. All the cording looks to be in place. And so I assumed initially that it was a case of this binding on the chassis here, but there's about a good mil clearance everywhere here, so it's not that. So what I've done is I've loosened the pulley from the actual shaft which goes to the tuning condenser, and that actually now rotates. So it's actually the tuning condenser mechanism itself that's totally seized up. Not quite sure what's going on there, because there's no signs of... There is signs of rust on the top of the shaft here. But when you look at it from underneath, it looks absolutely brand new. So, unfortunately, that means I'm going to have to take all these cords off. Take that pulley off. Because the tuning condenser is mounted onto this metal bracket here underneath the pulley, and so if I'm going to see what's physically jammed up there, all that has to come off. So A few other little things I've noticed is that I'm pretty sure this whole stringing thing is not correct here, because this looks like the mounting bracket for a pulley. There's no pulley on it. If I look on the other side, you can see here is an equivalent. So maybe we lost a pulley here at some point in the past. This has definitely been got at, because the whole mechanism here for going to FM is connected together with what is effectively an old shoelace, which whoever did it, whenever, didn't even bother to trim off the excess. They just left it in there, joined together with an electrical cable connector, and then this end of it goes and is tied to the lever on this mechanism here. So that's going to definitely need fixing up as well. So plenty to do here. Be a while before this baby is connecting up to the electrics. Okay, so I bit the bullet. I took off the cord for the AM section so that I could dismount the tuning condenser. And well, the reason it's locked seized up was basically this primary shaft here completely seized in its housing right here. I had to put a socket over it like this and then put it in a vise to force the shaft out, and it was well stuck in there. So I finally got it out, cleaned it all up, and now we're back in business again. I don't know, so I guess the glue just turned to the grease turned to glue over all the years. But it was, it was really seized. There was no way hand pressure was ever going to get it out of there. So, put it all back together, and at least that's that little problem solved. All we got to do then is put everything back together. Right, one tuning condenser all back together. So now all I have to do is fit it into the chassis and get the pulley back on it, which is going to be fun, and of course to restring the whole thing again. Before putting it back in the set, I thought I'd make sure there was no shorts between the plates, and sure enough, this one here had a lot of shorts from about this point down to the end of the travel, and it looks like at some point this got dented here. You can see it's deformed, and so it was pushing the plates together, so I had to just try and reform that a little bit so that there's no shorts between the plates, and it looks good now, so I can put it back in the set, and hopefully it'll all work fine. Okay, so here it is fitted, the tuning condenser fitted back in and recorded, and now we have full travel like we should. It still needs a little bit of final setup so that the pointer is in the right place, when the tuning cap is fully open and fully closed, but I'll get to that a little bit later. But at least at this point, I think we have the basic mechanics sorted out. Incidentally, you probably noticed that to get this pulley off of this tuning condenser, it fouls this one here on the FM one. So theoretically, you would have to remove the cords and take this one off before you could get this one off. So there's probably a whole separate tutorial on how I did it without actually having to do that. So if I have time, I may be doing that. Requires a fair amount of patience to get it done. But all worth it in the end, because I didn't have to touch the FM setup at all. Okay. So I guess before I go too much further, the one thing I'm not happy with really is this whole thing here, whether there's a pulley wheel missing off of here, but I need a manual, or I need more information before I can sort that out. So I've got one on order, and let's see what quality it is and how good it is when it finally arrives. Right, I think that's it. I'm just at this point waiting for the glass dial, which I've re-glued, which doesn't look too pretty, but I'm just waiting for that to set up, and then I can probably at least put the basics of this back in the chassis and put it to one side, because I do have a couple of other projects I need to get done before I get stuck into completing this one. I found there's at least one cord or wire missing, which would go from here across to here. And its purpose mainly just to hold up the cursor so that it runs parallel and close to the glass dial. There is, however, another one at the bottom which seems to be missing. So I've just put this white cord on here temporarily so you can see. But that doesn't seem to go anywhere near the cursor for the AM, and yet the cursor from the AM doesn't seem to be particularly well fitted in terms of how it tracks. It's just rubbing against the back, and it rubs against all this stuff as it goes along. So I'm not quite sure if maybe there isn't something that should stick out at the bottom of this cursor, so it could run along a wire installed here. We shall see as soon as I can find some decent documentation for the set. Hi guys, so I've been recapping the Siemens set, and so all these little white caps and the couple of electrolytics I decided to replace. And I think I can safely say that that was the nastiest recap I've ever had to do. Access to these things was just a nightmare. So this took pretty much a whole day to get it done. And I just hope I haven't pulled wires off and stuff. So I may yet have many hours of fault finding on this when we do finally juice it up. But yes, I measured each cap individually, having lifted one leg before I took them out on the old capacitor meter, and they all were, it was 100% failure rate, in the sense that they were all between 50% and 450% of their stated value, so not one of them was anywhere close to the 20%. I checked a lot of the resistors and they seem to be actually spot on. I mean, they're all 20% tolerance resistors, but all the ones I measured, which is most of them, all seem to be within a 10% range, so that's pretty good. I just hope the the other caps are okay. Normally they're pretty reliable, so I haven't messed with them yet. There was one electrolytic, this guy right here, which measured spot on, and since it's like 2 microfarad low volts and I don't really have a 2 microfarad cap, I thought I'll leave that one in there for now, see how we get on. Yeah, hope I don't have to do one of these again for a little while. This is yeah, not the fun part of the restore. Anyway, more to come.